welcome to the Kansas City Artist Coalition Artist Talk series. I am your host and programs director, Jen Harris, and I'm so happy you could join us today. In May of 2023, in our main gallery space, we are hosting Stephanie Alaniz's Fat Quilts series. Stephanie, with they, them pronouns, has this to say in their artist statement about the show. My Fat Quilt series is a love letter to my fellow fatties. In a society that refuses to value us, I want to take this platform and give us a voice to speak and challenge the norm that has been present for the entirety of our lives and beyond. Existing in a larger body in an anti-fat society is incredibly difficult. People are cruel and hurtful and often treat fat people as if they are the lowest form of life. The use of the word fat has been taken back by the fat activist community as a descriptor rather than a negative. This work's intention is to challenge the social norms while deconstructing how we see fat bodies so that we can reconstruct our views through a lens of radical kindness, empathy, and understanding. These large-scale quilts feature relief prints on fabric that are then appliquéd to larger quilt tops and assembled quilts. Stephanie Alaniz, they, them, was born and raised in South Texas. They received their Bachelor of Fine Arts in 2016 from Texas A&M Corpus Christi with an emphasis on printmaking. They then went on to receive their Master of Fine Arts from West Virginia University in 2019. Stephanie's current work focuses on normalizing insecurities, challenging anti-fat bias, discussing mental health issues, and the intersection of all of these topics. Through printmaking, textiles, drawing, and sculpture, they are able to create work about these topics with the hope of inviting the viewer to reflect on themselves and how these topics influence the world around us. They are currently on the board of the Radical Intersectional Print Guild and have been since its conception in 2020. Stephanie currently lives in Emporia, Kansas, where they teach art at Emporia State University and teach courses at the Lawrence Art Center in Lawrence, Kansas. I hope that you will enjoy this conversation and come to the Kansas City Artist Coalition in May of 2023 to view this show. We are located at 3200 Gillham and open Wednesday through Saturday, 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. Thank you so much and enjoy the conversation. Stephanie, welcome to the Kansas City Artist Coalition Artist Talks interview series. I'm so happy to have you here today.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here and talk. Thanks for that.
Go ahead.
I
I
was
will
just
have a
saying
history
thank
of
you
interrupting, so
for
go ahead.
introducing me. Yeah, that's all.
Thank you. Perfect. We're off to a great start. I'm really, really excited about your exhibition. When Cicely, our program or our exhibitions director, showed me your work, I mean, just as a person in a fat body, as a person who identifies so comfortably and happily as fat, I was elated to see Fat Quilts come into existence, and our works have a lot of mutual intersections. So I would love to talk about, let's get started on this exhibition that you have coming up at KCAC in May. What started the process of you creating Fat Quilts in the first place? And, you know, how did this come to be?
That's a great question. I would say it kind of started in like the journey, I guess, begins in grad school. Where when I went, I still really felt uncomfortable existing in my larger body and didn't really feel like saying I was fat was okay. And then I met one of my like still to this day best friends whose name is Luca. And Luca told me about fatness as positivity and really challenged my perspectives and was really patient and gave me a lot of info. So then I went on to listen to this podcast called She's All Fat, which at the time was like one of the only fat positive podcasts I could find. And so listening to that really challenged a lot of ways I was thinking. And then I started to create this body of work called the Insecurity Portraits, where I have people send me a photo of their face, and then from that, I render. And then they give me information about things they physically feel insecure about and things they physically feel positive about their face. And then I render the insecurities in like tonal black colored pencil, and then the positives in just regular colored pencil. And then there's a lot of like negative space just from like indifference, and I kind of never know how they're going to look in the end. But that and so when we look at those and we look at all, because it was open to all people, because I believe insecurities is an intersectional experience. I think it's something every human that exists experiences or has experienced. So I had lots of different people, and they yeah, it was just exciting to see, like, when you notice repeating things, you know that that's like a systemic thing. So people like not liking their second chin is because of fat phobia. People who don't like their wrinkles, that's because of ageism. We just start to see like these very clear, like, oh, lots of people hate this part of themselves, and it's definitely because they've been taught to hate that. And I think a lot of it has to do with capitalism and trying to like um be opportunistic by harming other people in order to gain money. And um so then I started wanting to be uh, talking more about fatness because that's like a big part of my life. It's a big part of my research. And so I started thinking about quilts because they're large and they can take up lots of space, but they can be folded to be smaller. So thinking about how like large people are taught to make their bodies smaller in spaces, or um, to actively be trying to make their bodies smaller in general. So I really liked that idea. And then of course I did it with woodcut. I do relief printing of the figures. So I carve them, and while I'm removing the information, it's kind of I've been thinking about it kind of in this lens of fatness and diet culture, because like I'm removing mass, but in the end it reveals like this fat person, like the way they are. So it kind of, I don't know, it's hard, that part's hard to talk about, and I haven't like fully found like the right verbiage for it, but there's something there that I'm really excited about. And then I print that on fabric and then applique it to a quilt that I've constructed. um Oh, and then it's open to the public, so it's like myself, my partner, and, um, participants, some of which are friends and some of which who are strangers, and I'm still doing it, so I'm just excited, and it's really new, but I'm stoked to do it. And I guess like, I've been doing research in between like the portraits, and now I'm like always consuming media about anti-fat bias, and specifically like Maintenance Phase, a really incredible podcast that I love. That's got Aubrey Gordon on it, and she wrote two books, one of which is What We Don't Talk About When We Talk About Fat, and the other that just recently came out is You Just Need to Lose Weight and 19 Other Myths that have been told to fat people, or something like that. But and there's lots of other authors and podcasts that I listen to, but those really got me thinking and being excited about what how can I use printmaking as a like in a way that is really supportive of my content. Like how can they complement each other instead of like just doing print for the sake of print, which I don't think is a bad thing, but I really want to be thoughtful about why I'm choosing a specific medium. Yeah.
What
So
do
I guess
you
that's the
think
answer.
when people come in and when people view your work, no matter what body they're in, is there a specific reaction that you're hoping to evoke, or is it a bigger conversation in general to have a
Mhm.
comfortable conversation about fatness without it being a negative? Like when you have people in the room, what are you
Mhm.
hoping they experience? And I guess also, what are you experiencing? Is this particularly vulnerable for you to display this work in this manner?
Yeah, it does, and I feel nervous, but I don't mind that nervousness that, because part of that nervousness comes just from knowing the reality, which is, like, I mean, I'm gonna reference Aubrey, Gordon a ton, um, but she wrote in her first book that Harvard did a study where they, like, collected data on bias over, like, 10 years, and, the only one that had increased was fatness. Like, it had gotten worse, like, people are much harsher towards fat people, and based on those studies, it's like 4 out of 5 people hate fat people or, like, have, like, really strong opinions about fat people. Um, and so, like, that means that statistically, it's really likely that someone's gonna be confrontational with me. Um, Although, I mean, this work is new, like I said, but I had shown it in Wichita at Wichita State, and I had 2 people who, had really strong negative opinions about it, and one of which who, like, really, she really didn't get it and was fighting me a lot, and just you
What
could
was the
tell,
kind
like,
of feedback that she was offering? Like, what was her stance or her
well, she walked up to me in the gallery and told me that the work made her angry, that she doesn't think it's right that I'm, like, standing there and trying to make this okay, and that she felt like I was complaining about it in a way, and that it's something I can change. You know, like, all the things that you're taught when you haven't done any research and you just trust the information that you've been given your whole life, and I don't think that's, her fault, but I think it just went against everything that she believes, and I think that was really hard for her to experience, is kind of how I took it. But I'm, like, a big believer in, radical kindness and trying to help like, inform people, and so after that, I've, like, created or I'm starting to create, I should say it's not done yet, but I'm creating, like, a doc of resources so that instead of asking me at night after I've given a long talk and I'm, like, on with a lot of people, I don't have to, like, try to defend myself. I could be like, "Here's this document, and you can educate yourself." Like, um,
I think that's
yeah,
a fantastic thing to utilize to your audience. In my own trauma-informed work, it's kind of the same thing. Like, I can't teach you all of the things to catch you up to what's led me here, but here
totally.
is a laundry list of resources that I've utilized that have all informed me, even in the most, like, mediocre or minor of ways, you know? Um,
Absolutely.
and I think that's such an incredible thing that you're willing to. I don't think folks realize how much work it truly is to be an artist who's specifically saying something that is against status quo,
Mhm,
that is anti-social norm in a way, to
mhm.
really fight back against these things and acknowledge, like, I know what you've been told, but also there's other information and
Right.
varying perspectives. Like, this is it's such an important conversation to be having.
Yeah, exactly. Um and I tried to tell her too, because there's a lot of evidence for fatness being rooted in racism. Sabrina Strings has a really good book called I feel so funny just being like, "Book, book, book, podcast." Um, but that's, like, just a big part of me. I love to consume information, and this is something I
Yes.
really care about, but Sabrina Strings wrote a book called Fat Phobia: The Racial Origins of or or no, it's called, sorry, Fearing the Black Body: The Racial Origins of Fat Phobia, and it's really incredible, and eye-opening, and a lot of it is, like, a lot of artists that we, like, are taught to follow are, like, big players in this journey of anti-fat bias, which was really wild to experience. Like, Albert Durr, who's, like, a huge person in the printmaking world, you know, is a big player in the beginning of her book, and it just, like, goes on, it's just wild. But, so trying to tell people, this is rooted in racism, And because you shouldn't, other people in general, like, we need to change things. And I know it doesn't feel intuitive because we've all been taught, and it's so, like, deeply knitted into us, like, that we like, you shouldn't be fat, it's not healthy, etc. And that's not true, and there's lots of evidence for why that's not true. Yeah.
Do you have anybody is there a particular myth that you feel particularly driven to dispel in the midst of all of this, or are you aiming to create greater understanding? I mean, I know it's all relevant, but
Yeah. I would say, like, the general intention, like, the, like, tiniest, like, I hope this is what you get out of it if you don't get anything else, is just to be kinder to people and to be kinder to fat people. Like, their bodies are not your business, and they deserve kindness and care, and to take up space without, like, making themselves smaller. Like, I just feel like it's such a human right, and like, it just feels so silly to be like, be nice to everybody. But that's like the
uh
hope I get, is that people will look at this, and maybe when they've been cruel to a fat person, even if it's like passively, maybe they'll consider something, maybe they'll think differently next time. Like, taking like, putting your bag on a seat because you don't want to sit next to a fat person, or, you know, just the countless ways people are harsh. My hope is just that they will be kinder and think of fat people as people instead of like failures, and
mhm.
like that they are morally bad because they exist in their body, you know?
It feels like such a strange I mean, it feels like such a strange thing to be in such a country that celebrates the overconsumption and yet to be told to crush yourself into the tiniest version of who you are, right? And not to mention
Hmm.
that, but I think that's interesting how you utilize the conversation of making yourself smaller, because while there is this expectation of like at all costs let your body be as small as possible, I think especially identifying as female, I get that so much, but also,
Yeah,
um, I I do such an active practice of trying to look at everybody like they are the 8-year-old inside of them, and thinking about like, "Oh, you're not insulting adult me. You're insulting
exactly.
little me." And the only person that's getting smaller is my self-confidence. Is that little
Hmm.
tiny, Jiminy Cricket of a version of me, and internally is what's getting
Yeah,
mutilated. The rest of me
yeah,
is still just standing here in front of you kind of taking it. Um,
totally.
and I think that that's such a it's such an I know it seems absurd to have to be like, "Everybody be nice." Maybe
I know,
consider how
it's,
you feel when you have this reaction before you allow yourself to have it. Consider what's
mhm,
happening inside of you and why you
yeah.
believe these things.
Hmm. And I hope they'll be kinder to themselves, um, because I also think, like, even like back when I was like exercising and not eating, and like that was in high school, and I was small, I still always thought I was fat and would say really horrible things about my body. And it's just not right. And it was just from the sphere of being fat.
Mhm, right.
Like,
Well, and
um,
they
yeah.
I feel like people victimize each other until people start victimizing themselves, right? So as long as they get you addicted to that idea of not being enough, then you will be forever in the pursuit of whatever enough is, which is
Hmm.
truly unattainable. What a
Yes.
depressing thing to realize too late in life, you know?
Yes. Yeah.
Is there any particular reason for your color choices in your creations, or is that all just whimsy? Where does it come from?
Yeah. So since I'm using other people's image, I think of them as collaborations, because you're taking the picture, you're giving it to me, and then I'm also asking you, like, is there like a quilt or a textile or an image that like you would want represented in this quilt or yeah, color palette that you like. And some people have said like I really like hearts or like I like red, orange, and green, and so that like has informed my choices. And then for myself, which I feel I can speak to the best, for my quilt, I used, well, I knew it as Holly Hobby, but it's also known as Sunbonnet Sue. And it's just like this pattern that was on a quilt from my earliest memory, and like I had it most of my life, as a child, I guess is what I should say. And it's just like tattooed on my mind. But being assigned female at birth and being raised to perform as a girl, um, I just that part of that choice was like this thing that was given to me to tell me like you are a girl. And yeah, and I don't identify with that. But so it's like, I don't know, it's like saying two things. It's like
I think
talking
that's
about
completely go
yeah,
ahead.
my journey specifically with that one. Yeah.
Well, it makes total sense that these are all of the beliefs that you have been handed, or the moral standing of this particular culture, and
Mhm.
all of these acts of resistance, whether they are because you have to, or because intellectually you desire to. These are all still, I mean, they're very valid fights, and it's, I don't know. I think you're
Mhm.
making so much more space for other people to speak up, and I think that's a very admirable and beautiful thing that you have done and that you're creating. So I'm really incredibly excited for folks to come out and see your exhibition in May, because it's a really beautiful piece of work, and this body is good and beautiful, and thank you for making it.
Yes. Thank you so much. Yeah, I kind of just think of it as like paying it forward, like Luca took a lot of time to teach me like a foundation of information that I then built upon on my journey for fat acceptance and fat activism. So I hope to do that for others as well.
I'm looking forward to the day when Aubrey Gordon says your name, and you both
Uh,
can glow, because I know when you find somebody who really offers, like, has done the work, is leading the research, is everywhere talking about
yeah,
something, that's a deep kinship, that's like, oh,
totally.
thank you for not only igniting this, but in, continuing to be someone that's on
Mhm.
my side in this fight. That's such an incredible feeling.
I agree. Oh man, I'm gonna have to like try not to like pass out.
You're
But
doing
definitely
great
be
work.
thank you.
Yeah, of course. Well, your exhibition will be on display at the Kansas City Artists Coalition in May of 2023. It opens first Friday, which is May 5th, and then it closes on May 26th. So I hope all of our viewers and listeners will come out and view our this new exhibition, Fat Quilts by Stephanie Alaniz. And Stephanie, thank you for being here today. I'm so grateful to you.
Thank you.